Hello and welcome to another episode of Children's Moments here on Heavenward Thinking. Today we're back with another object lesson, so I'll turn it over to Miss Ruth and we'll get into today's lesson.
Today's lesson is on fear. We know fear and do not be afraid is mentioned many times in the Bible. And we know if we turn on the news for just 5 minutes, we hear lots of things to be afraid of. There are a lot of things, especially this week in our world, that we've heard on the news, even at schools, many things to be afraid of. And I want to share something for the parents and the kids out there. All of us need to hear a reminder of not fearing. So I'm going to read some verses first, and then we're going to do a little object lesson here with Timothy. Our first one comes from Philippians chapter 4, verse 7. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. So if God's peace is guarding us, then that can help us with our fears. If we go to Psalms 56, verse 3, it says, when I'm afraid, I will put my trust in you. I used to say that verse to you when you were scared of storms when you were a little boy. And then, of course, wonderful verses in the book of Isaiah. Two of them in the same chapter, chapter 41, verses 10 and 13. Verse 10, so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And verse 13 says, for I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear. Then if we go back to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31, verse 8, we hear, the Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And of course, a wonderful verse on fear that Jesus gave when he was here on earth from the book of John, chapter 14, verse 27. And we hear, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. So we're going to demonstrate a heart that's trusting in God and a heart that's fearful. So we have a candle lit here, and Timothy has a balloon just filled with air. And this is going to represent us trying to deal with fear on our own. So go ahead, Timothy, put it over the heat of the candle and let's see what happens. Whoa, what happened there, Timothy?
It blew up and popped.
The fear just made the person explode, didn't it? Well, let's relight this candle. And let's try a different balloon here. And this balloon I filled with some water. And the water is going to represent God absorbing or taking our fears upon himself. And let's see how our lives handle fear with God filling us. Go ahead, Timothy. Hold that over the heat source. And you can probably even get closer. Guess what? Is that balloon popping?
No,
Put it even closer. Why is the balloon not popping?
because it's filled with water.
And what does water represent?
Jesus.
Jesus helping us when we're afraid, filling us. So instead of just filling ourselves full of hot air, which is what we are most of the time, let's fill ourselves with Jesus when we feel those fears, when we hear the news, when we hear bad news about something in our families, when we have a test at school, when we have to face a bully at school, when we have to go through a hard time, when we have any kind of fears, let God absorb our fears and you won't burst like that first balloon did.
Absolutely. Let us fill ourselves instead of with fear, but fill ourselves with Jesus Christ. And that will be our comfort and our peace through hard times. Well, hope you've been encouraged by this week and that you'll join us next time for another episode of Children's Moments here on Heavenward Thinking.